We are going to make a letter in this space right here. I am going to start with a line that is 1.5 inches long. I'm starting with a vertical line, and then I'm following my steps, connect the top and the bottom of that line to both vanishing points. And this is where, if you want to just make sure your ruler or straight edge is lined up, you can draw those converging lines back into space, but you don't need to connect them all the way to the vanishing point. Just make sure that your ruler is perfectly aligned. We are going to close off the left side as a skinny side with a vertical line, and then we are going to make the right side a little bit wider. Close off the top. And let's go ahead and erase these converging lines. From my initial cube, I can carve out letters. I always recommend carving out the letters from a cube, so that way you're not thinking about drawing the letter on the box itself. But let's say we're making the letter L. I'm going to first determine the width of the letter that I want to start with. So I'm going to make it about this wide. Again, use your ruler, don't freehand. And then where I have the bottom of this vertical line, I'm going to connect that to my right vanishing point. Close off the top by having this right corner go to your left vanishing point, and this right corner also going to your left vanishing point. Let's erase this part of our initial box. In perspective, we mostly have rules for everything. So to determine how to get this depth of the bar of the L, what you'll need to do is lightly connect this line to your initial vertical line. I'm going to darken this just so you can see it, but you should do it later. And then I'm going to connect the point where the vertical line and that line meet with my vanishing point on the left. And then this point connects to my right vanishing point. And I'm going to darken up all these lines so you can see this a little bit better. Now you have an L in 2-point perspective. So remember, you are not drawing this in 1-point perspective. If you're drawing it in 1 point, you would start with the face of the L like this. But since we're looking at the L from the corner, we start with that vertical line. Let's practice another letter here. I'm going to make the letter T. This time, let's have the face of the letter on the left side of the cube. So close off the left side of the cube with a wider space and close off the right side of the cube with a narrower space. If I were looking at the T from the front, it would look something like this. I'm going to start by making the top bar of the T. Determine how wide you want that to be. And that point goes to your left vanishing point. And then I'm going to make this middle bar. In order to know the exact middle of my cube, we can't just measure this width, which is just about 1 inch. So the middle is not actually at a 1/2 inch because this is going back in space. So I'm going to make an X very lightly from corner to corner. and where the lines intersect is the exact middle. So from here, I can draw that vertical bar for the T. I'm going to erase some lines so it's not super confusing. And then I am ready to connect any of my other corners. So this is really in step 2, where I am now connecting like the top and the bottom of this vertical line here. So this bottom corner goes to my right vanishing point. This is where it gets a little tricky in knowing how to close off this back edge of the vertical bar of the T. So to determine that, what we need to do is find this corner, and it helps to imagine as if this were transparent, if this were like a block of ice or a transparent cube. You should draw this light. I'm going to draw this dark so you can see it. So I'm going to connect this corner back to my vanishing point. Then I'm going to connect this point where I have this vertical line and this converging line meeting. This point goes back to my right vanishing point. And that intersection becomes a vertical line. So that is how I know exactly the depth of this part of my T. I'm going to darken all my lines so you can see this better. Let's make one more box that is longer on one side, and make sure that you're still working within the middle of your 2 vanishing points. I wouldn't want to do this here. You don't want to go to like the other side of your vanishing point. It gets really awkward. So you always want to work within the space that's more toward the middle of your vanishing points. If I had letters or a word on my building, like if this were a building in a city and a building had a sign on it, my letters are still going to be in perspective, and they're still going to follow the rule that lines are vertical or converging. So I'm going to start by drawing a rectangle on the building. So imagine there's a sign that is on the building, and this is helpful because you want to have the whole word or all of the letters going back in space. And I'm going to divide this into 3 letters. And I have extra space, I'm just going to erase that. So if I had the same T as a letter on the building, then I'm going to start the exact same way. I can make that X to find where they cross, or since I'm just kind of practicing, I can eyeball it. But the difference is that the letter is obviously flat on the building. I don't have the depth. However, it's still going to be in perspective. If I had the letter A, for example, this becomes a little bit trickier because it does not follow our rule. The diagonal legs of the A are an exception to the rule. However, the middle bar of the A is going back to my vanishing point. Also, if I had something like the letter R, that would also be an exception to my rule for my cube. I'm going to make this kind of boxy so that the upper part of my R is following my rule of converging, And then the diagonal part for the bottom is the exception. I've darkened in my letters so you can see this a little bit better, but remember that anything that you would see vertically from the front stays vertical in 2-point perspective. A common mistake is that people just write their letters kind of randomly, and these are the diagonal lines that are going nowhere, so make sure that the vertical lines are going to stay vertical.